What if enlightenment isn't a single moment of awakening, but a path with a point of no return? Because, according to the Buddha, once you reach the first stage, breaking 3 specific mental chains, failure becomes impossible, no matter what you do after that. You could forget everything Buddha taught. You could stop meditating entirely. You could spend lifetimes drowning in sense pleasures. You will still reach full enlightenment. Maximum 7 more lifetimes. Guaranteed. Which raises a disturbing question. If the first stage is that profound, if crossing that threshold makes liberation inevitable, why have so few ever reached it? According to the Burmese meditation master Ledi Sayadaw, in the entire 2,500-year history of Theravada Buddhism, across millions of practitioners, fewer than 1% ever cross that line. Not the final stage, not full liberation, the first stage. Before Zen expanded this into 10 poetic stages, before Mahayana reimagined the goal of liberation, before Vajrayana promised enlightenment in a single lifetime, there was this. Buddha's original map, 4 stages, measurable progress, surgical precision, the baseline, the control group for every Buddhist path that followed. Today we're walking through those 4 stages. Each one marks a specific transformation in consciousness. Each one requires breaking chains you didn't know were binding you. And by the end, you'll know exactly where you are on this path. The Buddha taught enlightenment as a developmental process. Liberation wasn't described as a sudden flash of cosmic insight. It was described as cutting chains, 10 specific mental formations called samyojuna in Pali that bind you to the cycle of rebirth. These chains break in a specific order every single time. You cannot skip stage 2 and jump to stage 3. You cannot break chain number 7 before breaking chain number 1. Not a moral rule. Architecture. In the earliest Buddhist texts, the Buddha keeps returning to this framework. The Samyutta Nikaya maps it precisely. The Anguttara Nikaya explores its implications. Generations of monastics tested it through direct practice. When later Buddhist schools emerged, they all defined themselves in relation to these 4 stages. Zen expanded them. Mahayana challenged them. Vajrayana claimed to bypass them. Which makes this the control group, the baseline, the original definition of enlightenment before other traditions reinterpreted it. Whether you accept this framework or reject it, you're still working with these stages, because this is what the Buddha actually taught. Now, we need to understand what you're actually breaking free from. That starts with the first 3 chains. The first 3 chains are the foundation. If these break, everything else starts collapsing. Because once identity view, doubt, and attachment to rituals shatter, the remaining 7 chains lose their grip. Not all at once, but inevitably. First chain, Sakkaya Ditthi, identity view. The lived belief that I am this body, this personality, this story. Someone criticizes your work. You feel attacked because you believe you are your work. The chain isn't the experience itself. The chain is the identification. The deepest chain, the root of all suffering, and you're probably still inside it right now. Second chain, Vicikicca, doubt. Paralyzing uncertainty about whether the path actually works. The voice that says, maybe this is all nonsense, maybe I'm wasting my time. Not investigation, doubt that prevents you from walking the path. At stage 1, this dissolves completely, not because you believe harder, because you see directly that the path works. Third chain, Silabhata Paramasa, attachment to rites and rituals. Believing the technique itself will save you. If I meditate enough hours, enlightenment will happen to me. Superstitious thinking about spiritual practice. At stage 1, you realize practices are tools, like a raft that gets you across the river. The attachment to the technique is having inherent power that dissolves. The diagnostic question. Do you still believe I am this person? Do you doubt whether enlightenment is real? Do you think techniques have magical power? If yes to any of these, you haven't reached stage 1 yet. Not a judgment, a map. The Buddha explained this in the Samyojana Sutta. Practitioners could verify their progress by examining which fetters still arose. Not theoretical, observable. So here's where it gets radical. Buddha said once you break these 3 chains, identity view, doubt, attachment to rituals, something irreversible happens. You enter a stream, a current flowing toward Nirvana, and from that moment on, no matter what you do, you will reach full enlightenment within 7 lifetimes. Guaranteed. You could lose your way completely. You could abandon meditation forever. You could forget everything Buddha taught. The current won't let you go. You're going home whether you like it or not. The point of no return. But here's the problem. How do you know you've crossed that line? And what does it actually feel like when those 3 chains break? In 1956, the Thai forest monk Ajahn Mun described his experience of becoming a stream enterer. He said it was like being struck by lightning. One moment, he was meditating on impermanence, observing sensations, watching thoughts arise and pass. The next moment, the entire structure of identity collapsed, as direct seeing. He described it like this. I looked for the self the way you'd look for a person in an empty room. I checked every corner. There was no one there. There never had been. And once you see that, not believe it, see it the way you see your hand in front of your face. You can never unsee it. Stream entry, identity shatters, and you can't put it back together. The Buddha described this in the Sotapaddi Samyutta using the stream metaphor. Sota means stream. Apana means entered. You've entered a current flowing toward liberation. Why a stream? Because once you're in the current, it carries you forward. You're no longer swimming against it. The current is stronger than your effort. You're being pulled toward the far shore. Sariputta reached stream entry hearing just a few verses about impermanence. Ananda took decades to move from stream entry to full arahantship. The current had them both. What happens when the 3 chains break? Identity view disappears, not as a concept, as a lived experience. You still have personality, you still have memories, preferences, habits. You still answer to your name. The difference, you know it's a label, a convention, a useful fiction. Someone criticizes your work, you hear it, you register it. But underneath, there's no one being criticized. The solid sense of me that would take it personally, that's gone. Doubt vanishes not as belief, as knowledge. You know this path leads to liberation because you've tasted it. The doubt cannot survive direct experience. Before, maybe enlightenment is real, maybe it isn't. After, I've seen it, I know it exists, I know the path works. Unshakable confidence, not faith, knowledge. Attachment to rites and rituals dissolves. You still practice, you still meditate. The superstitious thinking, the belief that the technique itself has magical power, that's gone. The raft gets you across the river. The raft matters. The raft isn't the destination. The Anguttara Nikaya lists specific characteristics of a stream enterer. Maximum 7 more lifetimes. Could be 1, could be 7, never 8. The karmic momentum generating rebirth has fundamentally weakened, incapable of breaking the 5 precepts. Crucial. Not out of morality, not out of self-control. The mental formations that produce killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, or intoxication, they no longer arise. A stream enterer cannot willfully kill another being, not because they suppress the impulse. The impulse doesn't form. Traditional teachers use this as verification. Can you imagine killing someone? If yes, even hypothetically, you're not a stream enterer. Can lay people become stream enterers? Yes. As we covered in our Theravada overview, the 20th century Burmese meditation masters proved this is possible through intensive vipassana practice. Rare, difficult, but achievable. And this is where things get dangerous, because many people think they've seen this when they haven't. They have a powerful meditation experience, a moment of clarity, and they confuse it with stream entry. Traditional teachers use 2 tests. Experiential. Have you directly seen the absence of self? Behavioral. Can you willfully break the 5 precepts? Both must be true. Stream entry is a transformation that cannot be reversed. So ask yourself, have you ever seen identity crack? Not understood it, not believed it, seen it. The moment where you disappeared and there was only this. Sensations, awareness, experience, no one at the center. If not, you're still before stage 1. And that's most of us. You now know what you're looking for. Which means, if you still feel like someone right now, if there's still a solid sense of self reading these words through your awareness, you haven't crossed it. What Buddha said next, this is where people misunderstand. Stream entry is not enlightenment. You're not done. You're barely started. Because you still have 7 more chains to break. And the next 2, sensual desire and ill will, these are the ones stream enterers struggle with for lifetimes. You've seen through the illusion of self. You still crave pleasure. You still resist pain. You've entered the current. Now comes the hard part. What happens when you weaken those cravings? When you're making progress? When you can feel the pull loosening? When you're aware enough to see your suffering clearly? Aware enough to watch yourself react? Aware enough that watching becomes its own kind of torment? Stage 2 is the most psychologically painful stage. Because you're no longer ignorant. You've seen through the illusion of self. You know there's no permanent you to protect or promote. You're not free either. You still crave pleasure. You still resist pain. And now you watch yourself do it. You see the trap and you still walk into it. Buddha called this Sakadagami, the once returner. 1 more human lifetime and then you're done. The Majjhima Nikaya describes this stage as the weakening, not yet the breaking, of the next 2 fetters. Why weakening? Because these chains are deeper, more ingrained in the nervous system, more tied to biological survival mechanisms. The Pali Canon uses the lotus metaphor. At stage 1, you've risen from the mud. At stage 2, you've reached the water's surface. Stem above water, Flower still submerged. You're making progress, you're not fully emerged. The awkward middle. The next two chains begin to weaken. Fourth chain, kamaraga, sensual desire. Not sensual pleasure itself, the craving for it, the pull toward it. This doesn't mean you stop enjoying food. Food still tastes good. Music still moves you. The difference, you're not enslaved by it. You eat a delicious meal, you enjoy it. You're not already planning tomorrow's meal while eating today's. The enjoyment happens, the grasping for more. That weakens. Fifth chain, vyapada, ill will. Not anger itself, the sustained wish for others to suffer, the resentment that persists. Anger still arises. Someone cuts you off in traffic, irritation flashes. It's the difference. Within minutes, it's gone completely. Not suppressed, dissolved. You can't sustain resentment anymore. The mental formation that generates prolonged ill will, it's weakening. Here's what makes stage 2 so difficult. You're more conscious than ever. Consciousness reveals more suffering. You see it happening clearly, and you still react. Before stream entry, you suffered, caught in it, unaware of the mechanisms. After stream entry, you see the mechanisms clearly, and you're still somewhat caught. The awareness is there, the freedom isn't. And part of you starts wondering if this is all there is. And that's not a philosophical question anymore. It's personal. One more human lifetime maximum. After this life, you'll either complete the path or be reborn in the pure abodes, celestial realms where only non-returners dwell, where you must complete the journey to Arahantship. No possibility of falling back, no chance of being reborn in lower realms, no risk of regression. Meditation deepens significantly. The jhanas, meditative absorptions, become accessible. Spontaneous generosity and ethical behavior increase, not as discipline, as natural expression. Someone needs help, you help. Someone's in pain, compassion arises. Yet the struggle continues. You see yourself acting skillfully, and moments later, you see yourself acting unskillfully. The contrast becomes sharper, which makes the remaining bondage more visible, more frustrating. Consider for a moment. Do you recognize this struggle? The awareness that sees suffering clearly, the patterns you can predict, the reactions you watch unfold, and the inability to fully stop it? Most serious practitioners live here. You're making progress. You're not deluded. You see what's happening. You're not free. The awkward middle. Here's the beautiful part. Once you reach stage 2, you cannot fail. You will finish. The path is set now. And this is where it breaks. When you finally eradicate those two chains completely. When craving and aversion aren't just weakened, aren't just managed, aren't just under control. Gone. At stage 3, something final happens. You will never be human again, not because you die, not because you escape into some void, because the causes for human rebirth no longer exist. The craving for sensory experience, the reactivity to pleasure and pain, the push and pull that generates karmic momentum toward embodied existence. Gone. Buddha called this anagami, the non-returner. You're still embodied, you no longer belong here. The world has lost its grip. And if that sounds peaceful, it also sounds a little terrifying. The Anguttara Nikaya describes the pure abodes, Suddhavasa in Pali, 5 celestial realms where only non-returners are born if they die before reaching full arahantship. No gods, no humans, no animals, no hungry ghosts, only beings completing the final stages of the path. These realms, Aviha the durable, Atapa the serene, Suddhasa the beautiful, Suddasi the clear-sighted, Akanitha the highest. Each represents increasing refinement of consciousness. Each serves as a condition for completing the journey to full liberation. Why did Buddha teach these realms? Because students asked, if a non-returner dies before reaching arahantship, where do they go? Buddha answered, they're born in conditions conducive to completing the path. No distractions, no regression, only liberation. The 2 chains completely destroyed. Sensual desire, kamaraga, gone. Not I resist pleasure. The pull toward pleasant experiences doesn't arise. Food nourishes the body, music is perceived, comfort registers, but pleasure no longer pulls you. Experience happens. The grasping around experience, that's what's gone. Ill will, vyapada, gone. Not I suppress anger. The impulse toward ill will doesn't form. You can still perceive harm. You can still recognize injustice. The reactive hatred, the wish for them to suffer, the sustained resentment, that mental formation is gone. Perfect equanimity, not indifference, not coldness. Balance. No more human rebirth possible. Even if you wanted to be reborn as a human, even if you tried to generate the karmic formations that lead to human existence, you can't. The causes aren't there anymore. Craving for sensory experience, gone. Reactivity to pleasure and pain, gone. Human existence depends on those formations. Without them, the karmic momentum flows elsewhere. If death occurs before arahantship, automatic rebirth in the pure abodes. No choice, no uncertainty. The karmic trajectory is set. Deep mastery of the jhanas, all 8 levels of meditative absorption, including the formless realms. Unshakable equanimity under all conditions. Physical pain still registers, the body still ages, illness still occurs. The mind doesn't waver, doesn't contract, doesn't resist. A non-returner might stub their toe. Pain shoots through the nervous system. The body recoils. But the mind remains unchanged, no irritation, no self-blame, no wishing the moment were different. Pain, awareness of pain, no suffering around the pain. Why will most practitioners never reach this in one lifetime? Because the conditions required are extreme. To completely eradicate sensual desire, you need simplicity, minimal possessions, minimal social engagement, minimal sensory stimulation. Monasticism provides those conditions. Modern lay life, with jobs, relationships, mortgages, constant stimulation, works against it. The Visuddhimagga, the classical Theravada meditation manual, describes the non-returner path as typically requiring full renunciation, not as a rule, as a practical reality. Be honest. Can you even imagine this state? No craving for pleasure, no aversion to pain, complete equanimity. For most of us, it sounds impossible, undesirable even. We think desire is what makes life worth living. Buddha said, this is when you finally see clearly. When the distortions of craving and aversion are removed, when the constant push and pull of reactivity dissolves, what remains is pure awareness, pure presence, pure freedom, still in the world, no longer bound by it. Even this isn't the end. 5 chains remain, the subtle ones, the ones invisible until you've destroyed the first 5. desire for existence itself, conceit, restlessness, the fundamental ignorance that underlies all suffering. To break these, you must let go of everything. Even the path, even the teachings, even the raft that carried you here. Because Buddha said something most people never understand, even enlightenment must be abandoned. And this is where everything breaks. When those final 5 chains break, when desire for existence itself dissolves, when conceit, the subtle sense of I am, finally collapses, when restlessness ceases and the fundamental ignorance is seen through, what happens? What does it mean to become an Arahant, one who has destroyed all 10 chains? And why did Buddha say even the path itself must be abandoned? In the Pali Canon, Buddha describes arahantship in one sentence. Birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more coming to any state of being. Done. The work is complete, the chains are broken, there is no more becoming. And here's what confuses people. Arahants still live. They still eat breakfast. They still feel pain when they stub their toe. They still have personalities, preferences, memories. Something fundamental has ended. The one experiencing, the sense of I, the knot at the center of everything, has unraveled. The term Arahant in Pali, Arhat in Sanskrit, carries multiple meanings. Worthy one deserving of offerings and respect. Destroyer of the enemy, one who has destroyed craving, the internal enemy. Buddha's first Arahants were the 5 ascetics who heard the first sermon at Sarnath. Within days, all 5 reached full Arahantship. Sariputta reached it within weeks. Ananda took decades. Different timelines, different conditions, same destination. Why did Mahayana Buddhism later reject the Arahant ideal? Because Mahayana said, liberation for yourself alone is selfish. The Bodhisattva path, staying in the cycle of rebirth to help all beings, is higher. The biggest split in Buddhist history. We'll explore that debate in future videos. For now, understand what the Arahant represents in the original teaching. You've broken the first 5 chains. Now the final 5 can be revealed. 6th chain, Rupa Raga, desire for form existence. Attachment to having a body, attachment to existing in any embodied state. 7th chain, Arupa Raga, desire for formless existence. Attachment to formless states. Attachment to the bliss of deep meditation. 8th chain, Mana, conceit, not arrogance. The subtle sense of I am, the comparison itself, the measuring, better than, worse than, equal to, the very structure of self-reference. 9th chain, Uddaka, restlessness, the mind that can't fully settle, the subtle agitation beneath even deep states. 10th chain, Avijja, ignorance, the fundamental misunderstanding of reality, the root delusion that generates all other formations. At stage 4, all 10 are destroyed. No more rebirth. The final lifetime in samsara, the cycle of birth, aging, death, and rebirth. At death, the Arahant enters parinirvana, complete nirvana. The 5 aggregates cease entirely. No continuation, no reappearance, no becoming. The body still functions. Physical pain still registers. Illness still occurs. Aging still happens. The reactivity to it, the resistance, the craving for it to be otherwise, that's gone. Memory, personality, preferences remain. You can still recognize an Arahant by their mannerisms, their way of speaking, their tendencies. The identification with those patterns, the sense that I am this, dissolved. Perfect peace, not bliss, not ecstasy, peace. The suffering has ended, the struggle has ceased, the becoming has stopped. Buddha used a famous parable to describe this final stage. He said in the Alaggadapama Sutta, "Suppose a man on a journey sees a great expanse of water. This shore is dangerous and fearful. The far shore is safe and free from danger. No ferry boat, no bridge. He gathers grass, twigs, branches, leaves. He makes a raft. Using the raft, he crosses safely to the far shore. Once across, he thinks, 'This raft has been very helpful to me. Should I carry it with me on dry land?' What should he do? Leave it behind." Buddha said, "I have taught the Dhamma compared to a raft, for the purpose of crossing over, not for holding on to. You spent lifetimes building the raft. You used it to cross the ocean of suffering. Now, standing on the far shore, you must let it go. Even the path, even Buddhism, even enlightenment. Because if you carry it with you, if you identify as enlightened, if you hold on to being spiritual, you're still becoming, still identifying, still bound. Leave the raft on the shore." Can you try to become an Arahant? Here's the paradox. Striving prevents arrival. As long as there's someone trying to become enlightened, as long as there's effort toward a goal, as long as there's a self-seeking liberation, the chain of becoming remains. This doesn't mean you don't practice. This doesn't mean you don't make effort. At some point, the effort itself must be released. The seeker must dissolve. The goal must be abandoned. That release cannot be forced. It arises when conditions ripen. Why is arahantship non-transferable? Because no one can enlighten you. No teacher, no technique, no transmission can give you this. Teachers point the way. Techniques create conditions. Transmissions inspire confidence. You must walk the path. You must see directly. You must break the chains yourself. Buddha said it explicitly in the Dhammapada. You yourself must strive. The Buddhas only point the way. Those who practice meditation will free themselves from the bonds of Mara. Warning: don't claim arahantship. Claiming it almost guarantees you haven't reached it, because the claiming itself reveals conceit, the eighth fetter. If you think you've reached it, you almost certainly haven't. One final question. Would you even want this? No craving, no becoming, nothing left to achieve. For most people, it sounds like death, like cessation, like the end of everything meaningful. Buddha said, this is the only real life. Not controlled by craving, not pushed by fear, not pulled by desire, not bound by becoming. Complete freedom. Most people can't imagine it. Most people wouldn't choose it if offered. That's why the path narrows at every stage. Can you reach this? Buddha said yes. Lay people can reach stream entry. Dedicated practitioners can reach once returning. Renunciates can reach non-returning. Monastics with ideal conditions can reach arahantship. He also said this: of those who take up the path, few reach stream entry. Of those who reach stream entry, few reach once returning. Of those who reach once returning, few reach non-returning. Of those who reach non-returning, few reach arahantship. The path gets narrower at every stage. Fewer succeed. Fewer complete the journey. Nothing left to fix. Nothing left to become. Nothing left to protect. Just this. What does this ancient map mean for us, people living in 2026, most of whom aren't monks, most of whom will never sit in retreat for months or years? Does this four-stage system have any practical relevance? Or is it beautiful theory with zero application to modern life? Most of us won't become Arahants. We have jobs, mortgages, families, student loans, Netflix subscriptions. We're not going to renounce everything, shave our heads, and spend decades in Burmese monasteries. So is this whole map, these 4 stages, these 10 chains, ancient mythology? No. Here's why. This 4-stage map became the baseline for every Buddhist path that followed. Zen expanded it to 10 stages. Mahayana said it's selfish. Vajrayana claimed to bypass it. They all reference this, because this is what Buddha actually taught, the original, the control group. Whether you accept this framework or reject it, you're still working with these stages. Even aspiring to stream entry transforms your practice. You have a clear goal: break the first 3 chains, see through identity view, eliminate doubt, release attachment to techniques as magical. The 10 chains let you assess yourself honestly. Do you still believe I am this person? Do you doubt whether the path works? Do you crave pleasant experiences? You can know exactly where you are. No ambiguity, no self-deception. Most people who think they're progressing aren't. In the 20th century, Burmese meditation masters said something revolutionary. Lay people can reach stream entry. 10-day intensive retreats, systematic insight practice, continuous observation of mind and body. Thousands of practitioners went to Myanmar, sat intensive Vipassana retreats, and reported profound shifts. Not arahantship, not even once returning. Stream entry, rare, achievable for serious lay people who commit to intensive practice. Once returning, extremely rare for lay people. Non-returning, virtually impossible without full renunciation. Arahantship requires complete renunciation, full monasticism. So why does this map still matter? Even working towards stream entry transforms how you practice. Understanding the chains helps you see what's binding you right now. The map prevents delusion. You know where you are, you know what's left to do. Around 2,000 years ago, a movement arose within Buddhism that looked at this entire path and said, selfish. They called themselves Mahayana, the great vehicle. They said liberation for yourself alone is not the highest goal. The Bodhisattva path, taking a vow to stay in the cycle of rebirth until all beings are liberated, that's the real teaching. The biggest split in Buddhist history. Theravada said, liberate yourself first. You can't save others while you're drowning. Mahayana said, if you reach the shore and don't come back for drowning beings, your liberation is worthless. Both positions reference these 4 stages. Mahayana didn't reject the map. They argued about the goal. And now you understand why the first stage changes everything. Why that threshold, breaking identity view, doubt, and attachment to rituals, creates a point of no return. These 4 stages aren't achievements, they're abandonments. You're not gaining enlightenment. You're losing the chains that prevent you from seeing you were never bound in the first place. Buddha said it perfectly, I teach only suffering and the end of suffering. These 4 stages, the end of suffering. Not because you escape reality, because you finally stop resisting what is. The current is flowing, the stages are mapped, the chains are clear. The current is already there. The only question is, how long will you pretend you're not in it? If this exploration of the 4 stages resonated with you, we're building an entire series on Buddhist schools and traditions. We've already covered Zen's 10 ox-herding stages. We've explored what Theravada Buddhism teaches. We've examined the 3 schools of Buddhism. The Mahayana uprising is next. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Leave a comment letting me know, which stage do you think you're at? Which chains still bind you? And if you found value here, share this with someone on the path. The Buddha taught these stages 2,500 years ago. They're as relevant today as they were then. The path is waiting. See you in the next video.